So Tulsi Gabbard, if she wants to have a future in politics, and I think she does, um, she was all over media a couple of weeks ago. She's on with Laura Ingraham. I've never seen her on with Laura Ingraham. I think those two are a little like oil and water, but maybe not. Ingraham comes from the old conservative school of talk radio, her and Sean Hannity. And at times it's too cheerleader for me. It's too tribal for me. At times they bring up interesting points and it's watchable. It's not like watching MSNBC, but it for me, it's been there, done that. And I think we need a politician, again, that kind of defies convention a little bit. But I understand why she was able to go on these shows. And it's a good idea to get your message out there. If you get to go on with Tucker Carlson, that's a big deal. That's why Jimmy Dore does it. That's why Glenn Greenwald does it, and other people who don't line up with Tucker all the time on every issue. But see, this is the coalition we need to build. The MAGA people right now are very much concerned about election integrity, as they should be. And Tulsi Gabbard, she was one of the very few House members last year that authored a bill that would address a portion of the election issues, and that would be ballot harvesting. And I'm sure Tulsi Gabbard would be on board with reforms like, yes, you need an ID to vote and things like that. Currently, I guess they're pushing another bill that's trying to open this up even more and make it more difficult to audit and to track. And, you know, if that's the goal of the republic, to turn it into like a banana republic, then we're never going to have a free and fair election again. And I think a lot of the people that believe in the principles of, say, American sovereignty, the American worker above a foreign worker or somebody coming here, kind of to displace workers. And I'm not saying we can't have immigration. I'm saying we need some reasonable restraint maybe on immigration, or at least we need to know why people are coming here. And obviously, those people coming into the country, those people should be subject to the same medical rules that the people who live here have to live by. Those rules now are being waived. And again, I don't think the MAGA people are happy. And I'm sure Tulsi Gabbard, being the common sense person that she is, probably understands that, you know, when people are crossing the border and just coming into the country, they should be subjected to the same kind of scrutiny that people are now who are visiting supermarkets or doing just everyday things and who've lived here their whole lives. And there are a number of other crossover issues that, you know, even Stephen Bannon, who used to manage Trump or was a top advisor and now has a really very popular podcast out there, the War Room podcast. And he's on there with people who are very different, I think, from the old guard, the Mitch McConnells and the people who were essentially trying to get Trump convicted, not just impeached, but convicted. And they failed. They failed to convince enough of their colleagues, but yet now they're looking at civil suits against Trump. And I think the American people, regardless of how much they dislike Trump, are going to get tired of the Trump show. And you start to think that this is about ratings and it's not about policy. Holding big tech accountable, again, there's an issue. Tulsi Gabbard, right on board. It would be an easy jump to go from Trump to Tulsi for most Trumpers. And then you'd have a broad coalition. You'd have the MAGA movement. You'd have libertarians who might have to hold their nose a little bit on some of these things, but certainly way better than Joe Jorgensen pandering to the left and not pandering to the middle or pandering to common sense or a broad consensus, which was bizarre to me because you're not going to out left the crowd over there, and they control all the media and everything. So it was kind of a real dumb move when you think of it. You really had to subvert it. You really had to go around it, not jump into it and say, hey, I'm just like you. I'm with her as a slogan. To bring back a Hillary Clinton slogan, yeah, no, that didn't work. Bad idea. See, people weren't looking for a libertarian version of the Democrats, the so-called libertarian. What they were looking for is somebody who embodies all the good stuff, and you grab bits and pieces from different places and you put it together like a mosaic, if that's a word that is even appropriate there. But a lot of people would be very curious about a Tulsi. Now, you can't call it MAGA. You just can't do it. Just like you can't say America first, apparently, which Tulsi has addressed before about, supporting Saudi Arabia isn't America first, that sort of thing. And those are the kind of lines we need to hear from Tulsi, though, to fire up the base of that, which isn't going away. The MAGA base, they're not going anywhere. In fact, they're still angry. They still want justice. They still feel as though, things weren't settled. And I agree with them. I don't disagree with them. I'm thinking, though, that you need a new vehicle. This idea of Trump running again, which was talked about even prior to knowing if he was, going to leave the White House or not. I just don't. I think that's done. I think that ship has sailed, and you need somebody who can communicate to different portions of the American people and not cause, would it go from Trump derangement syndrome to Tulsi derangement syndrome, TDS? I don't think so. I think Tulsi has the ability to warm people up. And what I mean by that is when you watch her, you're thinking, okay, she's real. She's human. She's not a robot. She's not just this cantankerous old guy who wants things to go back to like 1957, because it's not going to happen. Tulsi, I think, deals with today's political landscape, and she could certainly speak to issues that progressives care about and not sound like a lunatic. And that was one of the reasons I liked her from the beginning. She never sounded like a lunatic. She sounded like respectable. And I think that's what sets her apart from anybody on the political stage right now. There's nobody, there are people on the right that like this guy, was it Gates or whatever, who's a firebrand, who yells and screams and supposedly is a real populist and so forth. He's got this super like Elvis haircut, and I think he's from my state. He's like in the northeast part of the state or northwest part of the state. That's fine. He's not going to be the president. You need somebody who's kind of equipped to take votes from every place. But yes, the MAGA people want to get to the bottom still of what happened on November 3rd. Maybe you won't get any answers on that, but you need to push forward on reforming it, regardless if you're going to get the answers or not. And I think somebody like Tulsi Gabbard is perfectly positioned to take a large chunk of MAGA. I mean, there's no reason that those folks wouldn't embrace Tulsi Gabbard. Now, if she gets too patriotic, or wraps herself too tightly in the flag, or excuses, sort of hardcore right-wing behavior, she may take some incoming from the folks that liked her from the beginning, but we're going to trust her more than we've trusted a lot of other people. Tulsi Gabbard, the only time she let me down really was the endorsement of the corpse, which I was like, wow. And yeah, was that the right thing to do at that moment? Maybe, but it doesn't, change how I felt at that time and for days and weeks and months, because these are all the things that are happening now are all the things that she kind of railed against in her campaign, ramping up the war machine, saber rattling and talking about sanctioning people when we all know the sanctions hurt the citizens and they don't hurt the people higher up on the food chain, like in this Burma situation, which Trump was right. Nobody knows, in America where Burma is on a map. And it just feeds into this idea that we're constantly looking for places to assert our empire and to help out our military friends, our military contractor friends who don't need bigger contracts. This isn't how you drive the economy with just military contractors. And by the way, what an immoral way to do business. Yeah, people are going to die, but hey, more people are going to get military contracts. Yay. So you need a Tulsi Gabbard to talk about regime change wars. All the Trump people are 100% on that. You might have a small, super kind of what I call blind patriotic group that thinks everything we do, if we're involved or engaged somewhere, that's a good thing. And I'm telling you what, both parties are going to get a wake-up call on this issue. As time goes on, people are going to say, I don't want any more war. I don't want domestic war either. I don't want to be called a domestic terrorist for speaking my mind, because that's ridiculous. And that is worse than Orwellian to some degree, because it just stifles conversation. Like, you can't even just think something, although somebody would just say, yeah, it's right exactly there with Orwell. And there are other people that have written books about this stuff over the years, how just, bad thoughts can get you into trouble, and just keep your mouth shut and play their game. But guess what? The game is rigged, and 2024 is coming. 2022 is coming, and we need to elect liberty-minded people when we can. And yes, if there are liberty-minded Republicans and Democrats, which I don't know if that exists, but and yes, the Libertarian Party, if we can build that up so it's competitive and can recruit candidates who are smart and who are interesting and compelling, maybe even a couple of celebrity type people. I wasn't for that before, but all hands on deck. We've got to somehow break this sort of cultural logjam where we're not just running these sort of, technocrats or nerdy type candidates, policy wonks and so forth. We need all of it. We need them to know their stuff, but we need them to be able to communicate in a way that unites people, intrigues people, gets people involved in the process. That's why Tulsi Gabbard, still, there's nobody else on the scene that commands the kind of what I would call cooperation or consideration, where people who are of very different political persuasions would be interested in supporting her and working together with people they may not agree on. Oh, the horrors of that, right? But yeah, this is what we're going to have to do to win in the future. So Tulsi, still number one.